Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Trends and Directions for OT and IT Telecommunications Networks in Critical Industries, presented by Ribbon. I'm Andrea Anderson, and I'll be moderating this webinar. Our speakers today are David Stokes, Senior Marketing Manager, Solutions Marketing at Ribbon, and Marco Berger, Senior Director, Solutions Management at Ribbon. You can read their full bios on the left side of your window by selecting the Speakers tab. Just a few technical notes before we begin. If you'd like to download the slide deck, please click the Handouts tab button on the left side of your screen. The webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your volume is up. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand within 24 hours after the event. Time permitting, we will follow the presentations with a Q&A session. Please submit your questions using the Questions and Answers tab on the left side of your screen. All right, let's begin. David, please go ahead.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, everybody, for attending this webinar. And wow, what an exciting time to be in this type of industry. In telecommunications, which Marco and myself are in, the whole world is moving forward unbelievably rapidly. 3G, 4G, and now 5G out there ready to go. In the fixed world, we now have fiber being deployed everywhere, having a massive impact, obviously, on you as a normal end user, but also as to you and your industries, your critical industries. There's not just the telecoms world, which is going through major and massive change. You see huge modernization in all the critical industries, all at the same time. So we have standard critical industries, oil, gas, water, electricity, power, etc., all looking to become smart and putting more and more information into the system so they can work better, more efficiently, more ecologically sound, and give a better service. Rail, road, sea, all looking to automate what they're doing to work better. And when you bring the two together, what an incredible time to be in this industry. What exciting times this is. In this webinar, we'll touch on some of those things that are being modernized, how the technology that's there to do that from a telecoms point of view, and what we as Ribbon have seen with our customers as we help them step through this incredible jungle of technologies and business drivers, etc., and navigate their way to a successful ongoing future. So in the webinar, we'll touch on some of the modernization approaches and what's happening, how we achieve that. We'll discuss briefly the difference between operations technology and IT technology, why they're different and why it's important to know the difference, and then the technology you might use for each of those. And then, of course, whilst I am so excited about the way the industry is at the moment, there's always a dark side to these things. With people there trying to steal your data, block access to your data, bring your networks down, for whatever reasons. So you need to build a very strong cybersecurity approach there, and we will touch upon that. Of course, as I mentioned at the start, 5G is having a huge impact already, and it will have an incredible impact on everybody, including the critical industries. And then with this networks you're putting out there in the critical industry, you're ideally placed to start moving down a UTOCO evolution type approach, providing you have the right regulatory framework, of course. And then we'll touch up and finish with a couple of use cases and reference where we've helped customers move forward. So before I go on to that, a brief introduction to Ribbon for those who have not heard of us. So Ribbon Communications is, we merged two companies together at the beginning of last year. One focusing on Unified Communications, the former Ribbon company, and the other focused on IP and optical transport type applications, which was formerly called ECI. The two are together and work together seamlessly to offer you end-to-end solutions across your whole of your telecommunications needs. And we have customers across the globe, about just shy of $1 billion revenue. So a good medium-sized company with enough people to really help you move forward where you want to be, and a knowledge and customer base to make that happen. And as a telecoms company, we have a good mix of service provider customers across the globe, but also a huge number of enterprises and verticals of which the critical industries sit, including many blue chip finance service applications, but also huge rail companies like Deutsche Bahn, for example, and also huge power companies, etc. So a really good mix where we can bring the benefits of mission critical type services you need in the enterprises into the service providers. We can bring service provider technology into the enterprises. Really great to share that technology across and really learn from each of the different markets. So the cloud and edge portfolio is our unified communications type portfolio, where we focus on things like SBCs, media gateways, voice analytics to really give you a second to none voice type solution. For example, we provide the direct routing backhaul for Microsoft Teams, or one of the vendors that do that. So we've actually been quite successful in that over the last year, as you might imagine. Really important that to provide that voice part of your solution. In the IP optical side, which is what Marco and I are from, or the packet and optical side, we provide a seamlessly integrated packet and optical networks where the packet can provide aggregation of all the various services, aggregate them together, the transport across the network, and Apollo provides a very intelligent, lowest cost per bit transport across the whole network for your services. And we'll touch on a lot more detail on this as we move forward. And then the whole of our IP and optical portfolio is integrated with a seamless management provided by our product called Muse. That's just a real quick whistle-stop tour of who we are as Ribbon. Now on to the point of the webinar. Firstly, I think it's really important to say what we mean by critical industry. So our standard definition is a critical industry is a private or state-owned enterprise essential for society or the economics of society to function. And over the last 12-18 months, people have been really focused on what used to be thought of as critical industries, just oil, gas, water, energy, is now being expanded. Obviously transportation, but public health, telecoms has become a fourth utility. Everyone needs the telecoms to help work, so that's also become regarded as critical industry. So we can see a whole wave of different types of industries here, all of which are now being regarded as critical industries. And what this means is there's increased pressure on delivering broadband across the whole of the network, but broadband in a certain sort of way. So those industries which are infrastructure and are required never to go down need to be provided with broadband which is highly reliable and highly secure. At the same time, the traditional industries, oil, gas, water, transportation, etc., as I mentioned earlier, have got an increasing pressure to digitize. This allows them to be able to provide a network which is provides much more customer satisfaction, either allows the roads to travel faster and safer and more environmentally friendly, or it allows you to deliver oil, gas, electricity in a more carbon neutral way, or in the terms of energy, would allow you to start really into all that, and it's already happening, of course, integrating all those distributed energy resources that are coming in from solar, wind, etc. And as we move forward, only 2 or 3 years, we're going to start to see a massive proliferation of EV charging required for the wide-scale adoption of electric vehicles, and all of that will need a very different type of energy network and a smart energy network. So huge changes going on in these critical industry spaces. So what's happening? Let's just focus on a few of those areas. I mean, I've already started talking about the electricity sector with smart grids, distributed energy resources or DERs, EV charging, bringing dramatic changes to the network, which was once a very centralized model with centralized generation out to a high voltage network and then to a low voltage distribution network, all very one way, very centralized. With the DERs and even people generating electricity on their own houses, with solar panels, etc. This one-way model is now completely shattered. What were once just consumers are now prosumers. They're both producing and consuming electricity. Somehow that's got to be monitored and get the charging right. So we now have what's known as an energy cloud. Where energy flow in many ways, depending on how you want to do it. The network controlling that must be intelligent enough and dynamic enough and real-time enough to be able to allow that to happen. At the same time, as I mentioned in transportation, I've got rail up as an example here on the right-hand side. There's a need to move rail much more quickly, more rolling stock on more of the time, allowing freight and passengers to move more safely and more quickly. And things like ERMTS in Europe allowing that to happen with very smart intertrain signaling, etc. Again, requiring a very intelligent communications network. At the same time, users of that network want real-time information about what's happening to the trains and infotainment, so both information and entertainment while they're traveling. We all know about the smart cities, where you've got a whole bunch of different systems, so law enforcement, safety systems, road infrastructure, housing, all being linked together to provide a very smart ecosystem to attract investment into cities so that they can start getting the investment they need to build further and further. A very virtuous circle there with a smart city. The more investment you put in, the more outside investment will come in from industries looking to move to your city. Again, needs a very intelligent communications infrastructure. Then once you put all this intelligent infrastructure in place, you as a critical infrastructure are ideally placed to offer services to other telcos, or even offer end services yourself and become a U telco. And we'll touch on that near the end of this. So controlling the whole of this communications network, you have two types of network. You have the operations technology network, which manages the infrastructure itself. Much or even all of this might be said to be mission critical. It has to be there, has to be 5 nines available at an absolute minimum. You can't have the signaling system on the railway network just dying. The impact of that is huge. You can't have the power generation deciding to turn itself off for no apparent reason. We had that happen in the UK about 18 months ago. The impact of that was a 6 to 8 hour delay on the rail traffic leaving London on a Friday night. Really not acceptable for an outage of just 20 minutes of one generation plant. But the knock-on impact between system and system caused, I'd say, the 8 hour delay to train travel. Wow. You've got to be reliable. And you've got to be reliable when people are maliciously attacking your networks. You've got to protect it as well. And then the IT network manages all of the services and applications you have in place to keep your business operating. So you're managing processes, you're doing energy trading, etc., and your office and information systems. And typically this is IP MPLS running that. IP MPLS is not good enough, is not reliable enough as it stands to do the OT network. And traditionally, the OT network in Europe and APAC has been SDH, which is extremely deterministic, extremely reliable. You know what's happening. Unfortunately, SDH, or in its North American equivalent, Sonnet, is now end of life. And as I mentioned, the IT and IP MPLS isn't good enough to meet requirements. What can be done here? It really is a problem about how to migrate that network. And we'll touch on the technologies that are available to do that. But just to really, point out again, all of the various systems that are required in the OT network and why OT is not IT is because, as you can see from the diagram here, these OT applications have to be highly secure, have to have extremely low latency and latency variation, i.e. jitter, and be extremely reliable. Bit rate on these is not quite so important. On the applications, generally the systems up to now have been quite low rate systems running in the OT network. So high capacity isn't as important as it is in the IT network today. but reliability, latency, security, the OT network must deliver those. And as we move forward into the near future, when video and augmented reality get tied into OT, bit rate and capacity will start to flow into there. But at this moment in time, say it's security, latency, reliability. And this is driving a move from what I would say the traditional type of utility network, utility 1.0, to a new utility 2.0 type network. And this next generation utility or transportation network or company is typified by the explosion and collection and transmission and analysis of network and consumer data to now enable them to integrate the new technologies like the DERs I mentioned, the smart transport control, as I mentioned, in rail and road, and smart meters for all gas and water. All need to be integrated into the network and provided back to control and analytical systems in real time. So utility 1.0 is quite a static, monolithic network. The data doesn't need to be particularly real time being fed back. I mean, there needed to be extremely low latency stuff if you're doing teleprotection, but you didn't need to monitor, what the track dynamics were in real time. With utility 2.0, data is king. And we'll touch on that and explain why a bit later again. And we can see mechanisms for transporting and analyzing that data typifies this move towards utility 2.0. And that means that the transportation networks must also move. So basically what we used to be in utility 1.0 is mainly a circuit-orientated network, as I mentioned, based on SG8 SONET, with a small amount of packet transport. That packet transport will be transported using Ethernet over SDH or Ethernet over SONET on the SONET type network and delivered by Ethernet LAN type technology. And as I said, it was a pretty monolithic type network. What we're seeing now is the whole dynamic of the network has changed, whereas 80% of the network data is packet-based and only 20% of that network data is circuit-based. That is not because the amount of circuit-based data has dropped. That is because we've got an explosion in the amount of packet data. So the size of that pie per circuit is actually the same size. It's just that packets is now huge because it's the amount of data you're collecting. There is only one way to efficiently carry packet, and that is by a packet transport technology, IP, MPLS, MPLS-TP, but basically packet technology and networking is required to transport packet. It's been designed to do that. It is a very, very efficient way of doing that. However, as we mentioned previously, and we'll touch on a bit later, packet as it stands, IPMPS as it stands, is not great for OT. There has to be a technological solution to get over that, and we'll touch on that. Now, the other thing that's important, as I mentioned right at the start, if you remember, that we at Ribbon do IP and optical. The reason why you want to have a seamlessly integrated IP and optical is when you start to move to vast amounts of data, which we are now moving to, particularly if you think of like real-time video being provided all the way down, say, the track side of a railway or the road side of a highway, you're talking vast amounts of data. Optical is the only really efficient way to transport those vast amounts of data in a cost-efficient way with very, very low latency. So you need to be able to integrate that packet aggregation into a low-cost transport, and that's where the seamless IP optical integration comes in. And that sort of technologies underpin the utility 2.0. But we must not forget you need to integrate the SONET SDH network in place underneath this. So this new network needs to carry the legacy. So as mentioned, data in the new utility 2.0, data has become king. And we start to see CI applications, SCADAs even moving towards a data type application. And basically, we start to see vast amounts of data. So if you look at, say, the new synchro phasers, you're talking 15 gigs per day per PMU being produced. If you're looking at smart meters, you're looking at 1 terabit per day for each million subscribers you're supplying. Surveillance cameras, as I mentioned, trackside, etc., 9 gigabits per day per camera is being transported to the network. That has to be transported to the right place, and it has to be analyzed in the right way, and it has to be delivered in many, many instances in real time. So what this means is the transport network has to be able to support the backup of that network data of around 6 to 8 terabits of data per day. I mean, it's vast amounts here. You need a much more efficient network to achieve this. So what's required when we've talked to our customers, they need a migration strategy that allows them to migrate from these legacy sort of networks that they have today based on SDH and Sonnet. They need risk-free transition to this modernized critical infrastructure that we're talking about that's packet-based. And that modernized transport network needs to be a fully integrated IP and optical type network. IP to do the aggregation of the services, optical for lowest cost per bit transmission of that data, particularly when you're thinking gigabits and terabits of data here. The optical layer is fundamental to this. Being a mission critical type of business, this has to be field proven technology. No good going out there with the sort of Google model and DevOps model. Let's go and throw some stuff out there and see if people online can hack at it. And if it doesn't break, we'll carry on with it. If it does break, we'll just tear it down and put something else up. That is really not a great way to manage a critical industry. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's utterly disastrous to manage a critical industry that way. So this really has to be hardened, field-proven type approaches and technologies. Secondly, whatever transition you do has to improve the security of the network. With all of this increased data and all this increased monitoring points going out there in the network, the security vectors are massively increasing, and it could potentially become much more vulnerable. And the legacy services are incredibly vulnerable anyway. So as you deploy this new network, it must build in security as you deploy it to increase the security of your network from attack. Things like point of access security, encryption, isolation of secure services need to be built as part of this. And it needs to be tailorable to meet your specific needs and your specific operation environments. And then what I didn't mention right at the start, although we do solutions for service providers and we do solutions for critical industries, critical infrastructure is not service provider. You have to have solutions which are optimized to meet your needs. Things like extended temperature range, extended lifetime. When you deploy a communications network out there in the field, you want it to last 10, 15, 20 years. Typical network in the IP world, they upgrade it every 5 years. Very, very different type of operating model. So you need a solution and platforms which are optimized for critical infrastructure. And in addition, the whole of the OT network has to perform in an extremely deterministic way, so you know precisely what's happening. Again, particularly in the IP world, we've been used to best effort traffic. That does not cut the grade for this sort of network for the critical industries. So how do we modernize the network? We have two typical types of examples. The first is an IP overlay type of approach, where a new IP optical network is deployed to support the new type of SCADA type meters, new devices, new telemetry, the new services, etc. Legacy services continue to run on the legacy network and then are gracefully migrated onto the new network by use of circuit emulation and a technology called MPLS-TP. So MPLS-TP takes the best bits of IP MPLS and the best bits of SDH Sonnet and brings the two together So you're able to have a transport, an IP network which behaves very, very much like the SDH Sonic network, giving you the determinism that you require, but on a packet network, allowing you to integrate it into that packet network. So basically, you take those legacy services and you use circuit emulation, which is designed to take SDH Sonic, put it onto a packet network, and then make sure the packet network is working in a deterministic way using MPLS-TP. Over time, as you migrate more and more of these services and more of the applications switch to the new IP applications, the old legacy network becomes retired and you just have your new all-packet OT network. So that's one approach. A second approach that we commonly see is using an OTN underlay. In this approach, you deploy an OTN network. You deploy a new OTN network to support both the legacy SDH Sonic type services and aggregating the traffic from the IP network. So basically, you have a single OTN network integrating all your legacy network into OTN, ODU streams, and you have a packet network for the new services. And eventually, the legacy systems, as they start to migrate over time to IP, they become phased out, and your legacy network becomes phased out again, and you end up with a new IP optical network. So the end point in both these modernizations is the same. The route you go down it is depending by what way you want to modernize, and that will depend on multiple operation scenarios that you have. So that leads me on to a question I have for you in the audience before I hand over to Marco. So the question is, when you migrate your legacy TDM and SDH Sonic networks, as I mentioned, which technology are you most likely to select? MPLS-TP, as I mentioned previously, Carrier Ethernet, a new technology from service provider land called Segment Routing Traffic Engineering, SRTE, or IP MPLS using RSVPTE to do your traffic engineering. And as these results come in, I'll hand over to Marco to take over.
Okay, thank you very much, David, and what an exciting day we have today. So let's take a look at what are the responses that we have from the pool. Okay, so we have 30% on MPLS-TP, 22% with the Carrier Ethernet, and 40% with IP MPLS with the traffic engineering stack. That's excellent. Okay, very good. And this is highly related to the topic that we will cover very soon. We will talk about technologies. Okay, we will try to translate several of the messages brought down by David and to respond to several of them through different set of technologies. So when we talk about technologies in the IT and OT domain, we have a very rich variety of technologies. Some of them older, some of them new, some of them very new. And one of the challenges that those technologies must respond to are, first of all, when we focus on the OT domain previously described by David, is the requirement of new generation interfaces as well as old generation interfaces, what we call legacy services. So the capacity to transport and to handle both Ethernet, IP, as well as TDM, SONET, and SDH traffic. Also to being capable of transporting layer 2 and layer 3 and segmenting them into virtual private networks. So those different applications and services running on different layers of the network will have a very secure ecosystem to operate. Third, to have a deterministic behavior, because in the OT domain, we have, unfortunately, a very variety of mission-critical services. and we will talk about that in more details, but in the railway market, we have all the signaling and interlocking stuff that is highly related to safety. In the electricity market, we have the teleprotection and protection relays and all the new phaser meter units connectivity. We have to achieve a very high level of security using any technology because we will talk about security later on. This is incredible challenging in the critical infrastructure market. And we will talk about the scalability. It must be capable of supporting different data rates, starting from narrowband services, but up to broadband services. To be capable of segmenting traffic, because as David stated before, we have in the OT domain mainly different services and different applications, and each one of them has a different set of SLA and QoS to respond to. And those services must be segmented so we have no single point of failure in the network. And at the end of the road, we have to be simple to operate, simple to maintain, and simple to configure. So the technologies that we have today in our portfolio, and this is not related to Ribbon, but looking holistically into the market, are IP-MPLS, which is available in the market from the late 1990s, MPLS-TP, which is a subset of IP-MPLS, which was started to be deployed in the early 2000s. Circuit emulation services that allows the transport of legacy traffic over packet IP networks. The traditional carrier Ethernet, it is widely deployed in most of the service providers to deliver and to offer business services to most of the customers. The traditional optical transport network based on CWDM, DWDM technologies. This is a very interesting technology. And we have also new coming technologies coming together with 5G mobile network deployment. One of them is called segment routing and flex Ethernet. In this presentation today, I will focus on two technologies because segment routing and flexi, both of them are very new technologies. They are not field proven, and we have a long way to look at those technologies in the future to see if they are adaptive enough to this very challenging environment. WDN, OTN is very interesting, but lacks the flexibility to transport and switch narrowband and medium-band data services. Carrier Ethernet, as we spoke before, is incredibly and widely deployed, but mostly by service providers. In the critical infrastructure ecosystems, Carrier Ethernet lacks the multi-service and the reliability and availability and security that are required to be properly utilized in this market. Circuit emulation will be, of course, utilized and very heavy on any modernization process in this market. So let's talk about MPLS-TP and IP-MPLS. IP-MPLS appears earlier. It was one of the technologies deployed and developed to respond to the need of supporting multiple services in the service provider's environment. And it was a very effective, and it's still a very effective and reliable technology. Later on, an additional stack was added to the IP-MPLS to deliver more traffic engineering. And we will talk about that in a few moments. Later on appeared MPLS-TP. MPLS-TP appeared in the early 2000s as a subset of IP-MPLS when the operator saw that IP-MPLS was not capable of delivering all the deterministic behavior which was required once an operator wanted to replace an SDH or SONET network with a new technology. So in this migration, IP-MPLS was not fully suitable for the different network operators. So that's why MPLS-TP was developed as a subset of IP-MPLS. So one of the consequences of this subset development is that it is focused on deterministic and static packet networks. So it has a dual directional circuit configuration. So it means that the payload in any circuit goes to the same way inbound or outbound. The OAM cells and packets, they run together with the payload, so whatever information they bring to the operator in terms of latency, jitter, packet loss, error packet, it's related to the payload it is transporting, and it goes to the same circuit as the payload. It's highly protected, meaning it can be utilized in a different set of network topologies like meshed, ring, star, and it still maintain a very high level of protection. And it has a complete separation between the data plane and control plane. So it looks very similar to the existing TDM, SDH, and SONET systems, meaning that once you configure a circuit and you activate it, it's static. Nothing can change it from any perspective. In the IP/MPLS world, this capability was not available. Okay, so because this is a dynamic layer 2, layer 3 transport protocol, and later on the IP/MPLS development, they added the traffic engineering stack that is called the RSVPT. And this brought the IP/MPLS technology very near what MPLS-TP was originally built for. Okay, so those are the two major technologies today available for critical infrastructure customers. And they are widely used in most of the modernization projects today. Okay, each one with a specific set of characteristics. When we look into what is the non-profit organizations and electricity company associations stating, like SIGRE, for example, which is a non-profit association centralizing more than 1,000 electricity companies, they state very clearly that the best technology to replace SONET, SDH, and TDM is MPLS-TP because it has a very similar behavior. It's very deterministic, it's very easy to operate, and the transition from the operator's point of view from SDH, SONET to MPLS-TP is quite smoothless and very easy. One another aspect in this, let's say, dilemma and choice is security. And NERC in the United States, North American Electricity Reliability Corporation, which is one of the major regulators in the cybersecurity for critical infrastructure in the United States, stated very clearly that non-routable transport protocols in the OT network are preferable to routable protocols because they are less vulnerable to cyber attacks and they have less vulnerabilities. So this is also another element that brings us to the choice of MPLS-TP against IP/MPLS in the levels of security. Okay, not only in the simplicity and the deterministic behavior, but also in the security. And let's not forget, in several utility companies, and if we focus in a brief moment in the electricity market, we have a very latency sensitive, jitter sensitive, and symmetry sensitive applications like protection and teleprotection. Those are systems that they have to react on very short periods of time. We are measuring in less than 10 milliseconds for differential teleprotection, less than 20 milliseconds for all other types of protection relays. And those response times are critical to avoid outage and major failures in any electrical grid. So focusing on the electricity companies, we see no other choice in the market today but to choose for MPLS-TP. In other critical infrastructure entities like railways, oil and gas, then we will have another mix of requirements, another mix of applications and services, and both technologies will provide similar values. Let's talk about IT and OT convergence, because this is something that is happening as we speak. And it brings to the table many, many challenges. And it's starting with the increased number of interfaces between the IT, the administrative network, and the OT, the operational network. And later on, it will come with a full convergence and integration of both domains. And they have different set of requirements. One challenge that this converged IT and OT scenario must respond is the complexity of such multi-layer traffic to be handled and managed by a single pane of glass or a single management system. The other challenge are security related, because the challenges and the threats that we have in the IT domain are quite different from those that we will find in the operational network. So we have to build a very holistic ecosystem to provide complete, or not always complete, but a comprehensive cybersecurity coverage in this converged network. Ownership. Who is responsible for this converged network? The IT operator or the OT operator? Traffic prioritization. Who manages the prioritization of the services in this very complex ecosystem? Labor rules. In some countries, the same teams that are managing and operating the OT network, they are not allowed to manage and operate IT traffic and IT stuff because of regulation stuff. And this is something that in some countries is blocked for many convergence of these two networks. And second, and last but not least, the teleprotection or the mission-critical systems that must run in this converged scenario. So we have different solutions for this converged IT-OT scenario. We can start with providing segmentation of networks using the traditional, very secure, very reliable optical transport network solutions. So utilizing the same fiber optics, but utilizing the spectrum of light in the fiber to transport differently IT, OT, surveillance, teleprotection, signaling, whatever is required in using different wavelengths and colors. We have the new technologies coming from the evolving and developing 5G mobile services, that is network slicing. So this is a technology that is applicable for the IP domain, so it can be applicable to the existing MPLS solutions in the market, and will follow us in the future for many years in the upcoming technologies like segment routing and FlexC, and they will provide a way to segment, to separate the traffic and according to the different sets of SLAs, service level agreements, and QoS, and to provide a very high level of security. Chances of leakage between one slice to another are quite impossible to happen. But nothing is 100% secure. Last but not least, the management of the different services. So you have to have a very capable multi-layer orchestration system to provide all the awareness in terms of SLA, all the provisioning and automation, and all the redundancy for the network management and the capacity to grow and to scale up and to integrate different vendors under the single management system. So a few words about cybersecurity. The OT threat is real, okay? And if you follow on the news, it's almost a daily coverage of different cybersecurity attacks that different critical infrastructure entities are suffering. Water infrastructure in Israel and in the United States, oil and gas and manufacturing all around the world, hospitals, traffic signals, ransomwares to everywhere, okay, from small and medium enterprises up to big industries and critical infrastructure stuff. And all this started not from 2010, as stated here, but much before that. But what is critical here is that the percentage of attacks aiming, directioning to the critical infrastructure segment remains in the last 20 years around 70 to 80% of the cyber attacks. So this is undoubtable. Different organizations with different motivations are targeting on a daily basis critical infrastructure entities. So this is something that we have to deal with. And unfortunately, there is no one fits all in this segment. Okay, so we have to have a very holistic and open approach. We have to provide to look at our networks with a very professional and structured planning, and we have to take into account all the different threat scenarios that are capable of inflicting damage to our operation. In the OT domain, what was in the past regarded as a very secure environment because of separation, complete separation from the IT and internet. Nowadays, it is quite the contrary. It's a highly vulnerable ecosystem. If we have vulnerabilities coming from the small but significant IT interfaces that are necessary to go into the OT domain, the operational domain, we have vulnerabilities in the infrastructure. Most of the critical infrastructure entities, they cover large geographical areas. Okay, so it means that a hacker can tap the fiber or can intercept the microwave signal elsewhere, everywhere in the country or in the state or in the municipality. So the media is quite vulnerable. And last but not least, the stations, the locations of that belongs to the critical infrastructure entity are another point of vulnerability. And if someone succeeds and penetrates this secure and segmented area and delivers a malware within the very protected operational station or location, we are in a deep problem. So we have to treat cybersecurity in a multi-dimensional way, in a holistic approach, looking at multiple layers of the network from layer 1 up to layer 7, to have considerations not only to deploy firewalls but UTMs, which are a bit more advanced compared to firewalls. They have other cybersecurity tools in the hardware. We have to look into different and customized solutions for the OT environment. Solutions like anomaly detection, deep packet inspection for the different data protocols running in this operational environment. So at the end of the day, our goals are secure the network and the services to be flexible and scalable so we can expand the range or the coverage of the cybersecurity that we are planning so it can cover existing and future threats, and to reach a situation where we have redundancy and resilience for every single mission critical stuff in our network. A few words about 5G. 5G is coming and big time, and in the adoption rate of 5G is increasing day by day, and we are looking at 5G being implemented in different market segments. And 5G is primarily related to IoT and industrial IoT and edge computing. So those three words will go hand by hand when we look into the dynamic IT-OT modernization scenario. In the Industry 4.0, 5G and LTE that will be modernized 5G is increasingly being utilized to connect wireless all the mission critical stuff running in the production plant, all the robots, all the cameras, all the smart sensors, all the actuators. The same technology is providing broadband connectivity for data centers. And the same technology is providing connectivity for surveillance cameras and several IT services, including virtual reality and augmented reality within the industrial campus. It's also present in the residential market, in the non-mission critical enterprises, and in the mobility market. And mobility, we have to be very careful because there will be no autonomous electrical vehicle without 5G and without IoT and without edge computing. Because all the advanced services, supervision and monitoring sensors will be connected and available through a combination of those three technologies. And the smart grid of the future electricity company will highly depend in the field data network, in the distribution network, on reliable wireless technologies. And 5G is a big player in this upcoming deployment. And one of the things that we have seen is that some use cases are extremely related to 5G. For example, IoT. IoT and industrial IoT without 5G, they will not fulfill all the potential of the technology. And it is quietly represented by the existing use cases utilizing the IoT today and planned to be using IoT in the future. One third of the use cases related to 5G will be related to industrial IoT and IoT. So they are matched one to another. And as I said before, connected vehicles and other applications will rely heavily on 5G technology. Let's talk about Telecom. When we talk about 5G, it brings a lot of demands into the telecommunications market. One of the demands about network capacity. When we talk about 5G, the service providers must be capable of increasing the capacity of the network to support all the upcoming broadband services available in 5G, countrywide and statewide. But not only that, 5G requires fiber optics all over the place. And as we all know, there is a huge gap between telecommunication services in the rural area against telecommunication services in the metropolitan area. So all this together brings to the utility companies a huge opportunity because they are uniquely positioned to deploy fiber optics, to deliver capacity, to reach out for the rural environment with the required set of capacities to support both fixed and 5G, 4G advanced wireless services. So all this together brings a spring opportunity for all utility companies, electricity, transportation, oil and gas, and this is exemplified in the United States by several multi-billion projects that are delivering capital and resources, so the utility company in different states and regions can evolve and deliver advanced telecommunication services, both has a carrier or has a retail multi-service service providers, and to increase the capacity and increase the offering in those regions. So this is a very important model that we are looking into every modernization process that happens in the area. So in a nutshell, whatever modernization process we are looking at, it must ensure that legacy and new generation services are delivered and supported. It means that we must have in our network the tools to provide the ensured latency, jitter, wander, and protection. We have to be capable of scaling up from 1 gigabit up to hundreds of gigabits very fast, because one of the things that has been, let's say, a reality in the last years is the growing demand for more and more bandwidth. So whatever network we deploy today, it must be capable in the near and long-term future to scale up and provide the required growth to support new applications. To have the capability to support deterministic mission-critical services. This is critical for the critical infrastructure market segment. Alongside, it must be dynamic enough to support all the layer 2, layer 3 administrative and non-mission critical services, and to be capable of integrating both optical and packet solutions. And why is that? Because one of the tools that we have today to optimize or to maximize the bandwidth capacity in our existing fiber optic infrastructure is optical technology, WDM, CWDM, and those are essential tools, as described by David in one of his slides, in any utility or critical infrastructure modernization process. Security. Cybersecurity must be dealt together with telecommunications in a holistic manner. This is a highly regulated market, so standards must be complied, and we must look very carefully at what are the capabilities that are embedded in the platform so we can be ready for the upcoming new services, new network transport technologies, and to be very future-proof. So a few takeaways. Modernization and new applications, they drive a huge surge in traffic. As spoke by David and explained by David, the data is the king today. So data we have to connect more devices. We have to collect more data. And in order to be effective and efficient, we have to analyze it in real time and storage in real time so we can respond to the existing and future needs in the critical infrastructure market. Smart utilities must utilize smart technologies, and we need not one single technology, but a mixture of technologies. So the MPLS-TP will not alone by itself respond to all the different requirements. So a mixture of MPLS-TP and IP-MPLS in the same platform will have a great value, great benefit for the critical infrastructure entities. Utelcos. Okay, Utelcos, as we spoke before, very big opportunity for utility companies. It's being driven by 5G, by the rural broadband telecommunications modernization, by the requirement for high-speed connectivity, and more and more and more. So let's try to see some examples to translate whatever theoretical things we spoke about into real customers deploying real equipment. So one of the examples that we can talk about that is BKW. BKW is a electricity company in the western part of Switzerland, and it's a multi-layer electricity company, meaning that it's responsible for generation, for transmission, and distribution of electricity. So it's a very complex electricity grid. It has the capability to supply electricity from both high voltage to medium and low voltage. And one of the goals they had a few years ago was to modernize their OT network to be capable of addressing several challenges. One of the challenges they have was to integrate and connect DERs. DERs was explained by David in the beginning. Those are the distributed energy resources like wind farms, solar farms that must be connected and integrated into the electricity grid. And this is not a simple thing to do. It needs a lot of SCADA, lot of sensors, and in order to allow them to truly connect and deliver electricity to the existing electricity grid. They need to provide a much more capacity in terms of bandwidth in the existing network because of different applications. Phaser meters, more new generation SCADA, a lot of video surveillance cameras all over the place. Each camera, as spoken by David, consumes a lot of bandwidth in real time, and to provide a platform for growth and future applications. So this is, in BKW, we have deployed all the elements that we have in our portfolio. The optical layer, the IP layer, and the IP layer we have a very flexible solution because in the IP layer we are deploying both simultaneously MPLS-TP for the mission critical applications and IP-MPLS for the less critical applications and all the IT traffic coming into the OT domain, and all that managed by the Muse and the Lightsoft management system. So this is an interesting example to talk about. The second example is Deutsche Bahn. Deutsche Bahn is one of the largest rail operators in the world, and it's the largest rail operator in Europe. And it's composed by different business units, or different units. And one of them is responsible for the railway infrastructure. Second one is related for the IT, OT services. The other is for the dispatching and the voice services, and so forth and so forth. And they wanted to build a reliable and highly capable optical infrastructure, capable of supporting all those business units and all those requirements. So Deutsche Bahn is modernizing completely their optical network to a new generation DWDM network, which will be nationwide, We started with 74 nodes, 88 with 74 nodes. It will grow eventually in a very few years up to 900 sites all over Germany. And all the services are not limited to the Apollo DWDM network we are delivering to Deutsche Bahn. We are also providing a 24-hour, 7 days a week a network operations center that is outsourced to Ribbon, but to Deutsche Bahn. So we are delivering different layers of services and solutions for Deutsche Bahn. And to finish the presentation, a few words about Naturgy. Naturgy is a company that was formerly known as the Gas Natural Fenosa in Spain. So it's a company responsible for the distribution of not only gas, but also electricity. So it's present in tens of countries, delivering services to more than 18 million customers. So they were also looking for a very cost-effective but conservative modernization network. And in this specific network, they selected a solution that is based on two technologies at the same time. So the technology, the network is capable of handling both native TDM and SDH traffic, as well as advanced layer 2, layer 3, and MPLS traffic simultaneously. So they wanted this native capability to ensure that all the existing mission-critical services are maintained using the same technology. In the future, that is very near from today, those services will migrate slowly, gradually, to the packet IP domain of the network. So this is a different approach for different challenges. They are a distribution company, and this is a good example of providing a viable, secure IP and optical transport solution. Okay, so that's what we had for today. Thank you very much, and I believe that now this is the Q&A session.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We do not have time for a live Q&A today, but please still submit any questions you have using the Q&A tab to the left of your screen, and we will try our best to get back to everyone who submitted personally after the webinar. Thank you for attending this Fierce Telecom webinar and for submitting your questions. I'd like to thank our speakers for participating and Ribbon for presenting today's webinar. This webinar has been recorded and will be available on demand within 24 hours after the event, using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. Thank you again for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.